Hey, what is up, Bills Mafia? Welcome into another episode of the Buffalo Nerd. If this is your first time joining us, thank you for being here. We're happy to have you. If you're part of the Nerd Mafia already, thanks for coming back. I'm glad you're listening. We got a great guest this week. Everybody's super amped up. Obviously, we are days away from getting this football season started. So before we dig too much into getting into the football and the game and all that kind of stuff, I wanted to shout out my guest that I have with me today. I'm super stoked about this one. He took his time out of hanging out at football practice today for the Steelers to come on and hang out with us a little bit. So I got Christopher Carter joining me. He also does the Locked On Steelers podcast himself. He covers Pitt. He covers the Steelers. He's all over the place. So Christopher, welcome in. Thanks for your time. Why don't you shout out, let the audience know a little bit about yourself.
You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Carter Critiques. That's where I give all my general takes and just updates on all the things I'm working on. I do cover the University of Pittsburgh's football and basketball teams, as well as the Pittsburgh Steelers. Kind of do it for different venues. I also do some high school football work in Western PA. And fantasy football, all sorts of things. Steeler Nation Radio, Channel 11, our NBC affiliate, WPXI in Pittsburgh. DK Pittsburgh Sports.com and the Locked On Steelers podcast. Just many hats, Colt. Many hats.
Yeah, so you're kind of busy. Yeah,
okay. Just a little bit. But it's good to be busy in football season.
Right, so you're busy, but you get to watch a lot of football. You've had your pulse on this team this preseason and kind of through camp and that kind of stuff. So I figured you'd be a great person to talk to as we're getting ready to head into week one of what I believe is two teams that are probably playoff contenders this season, and they get to kick off with each other, right? So, but before we get into all that kind of stuff, we do like to highlight the charity every week on the show. So as the guest, Christopher got to choose the charity that he wanted to highlight this week, and he chose the Community Empowerment Association, So Christopher, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about them and why you chose them?
Well, the Community Empowerment Association is a group that is one of the stronger organizing powers in Pittsburgh, especially in the Black community there. It's also a place where I sit on the board of directors at because I like to volunteer for them. I've been with them for several years where I'm just coming in, helping with different programs. What CEA, Community Empowerment Association, the short version of it, or abbreviated, but what CEA does is they do a lot of different projects, whether it's mentoring kids to help them, give them after school things to do, helping them through the summer, stay on task at school, work to teach them different skills that'll help them in different clubs, activities, and also getting into college. There's lots of community efforts as far as organizing around the city of Pittsburgh. They try to help neighborhoods and work to improve, negotiate with the city to say, hey, let's do more for this part of the city that's getting overlooked right now. A lot of different projects that CEA takes on. Like when Black Lives Matter was a major issue, CEA was right at the forefront as far as helping organize a lot of the efforts to kind of understand what the messaging was there and helping kind of steer us in the right path. At least in the Pittsburgh area. So if you ever want to check out what they do, go to ceapittsburgh.org and you can see all of their works. It's a great organization. I've been privileged to sit on their board of directors for such a long time and to kind of, experience some of the kids that I've met through there. A couple years ago, I got to intertwine both of my, my passions of covering football and helping out the community by getting a bunch of the kids that they mentor to take them to Steelers training camp. And they got to
Sweet.
hang out and Juju Smith-Schuster high five one of the kids, and the kid was like, "Oh, I'll never wash this hand again."
Awesome.
It was just stuff like that. But that's what CEA has been all about, is getting these kids exposure to things that they might not have ever seen before, helping them understand, this is the path that you need to be on to be more successful in life. Lots of great stuff there. And there's so much more that they do in the community, helping with, community building projects, getting more, minority construction companies opportunities where there hadn't been in the city of Pittsburgh. So it's a great place. Check them out at ceapittsburgh.org.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you sent over that's who you wanted to highlight. Of course, I went and started digging around and taking a look. It's super cool, everything that's happening. I mean, it's a massive web of just like youth empowerment that's out there, at least from what I'm gathering, just from checking out the site and kind of stuff. Obviously, you're on the board, so you're telling me that is what it is, and it's really cool. I mean, because there are still, as much as we want to try to not pretend these things still exist, there are communities out there that still need help. There's areas that are still struggling, especially coming out of COVID. there's big neighborhoods that are taking hits out there. So it's really cool what they're doing. And it's, everything about the youth. It's the way we can change what we're going to do moving forward. Right. So I really like it. It's a great organization. So like we always do, everything will be in the show notes. Chris has already mentioned where you can find it a couple times, but we'll make sure you can link right over there, check out all the resources, find out what's going on over there. It's cool because usually too, when you find these things is if you look close enough, there's probably an association in your backyard that's very similar to this. Right. So, I mean, it just kind of gets the word out there about it. So thanks for bringing that up, Chris. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
So, should we talk about the upcoming Pittsburgh Steelers versus Buffalo Bills week 1 of the 2021 NFL season with fans in attendance? Everything's back in normal-ish. I'm pretty stoked. Just from preseason, what's your overall status of the Pittsburgh Steelers right now?
I mean, they're healthy. That's the good thing for the most part. Stephon Tuitt, their star defensive tackle, listed as defensive end, but he really is just a defensive tackle. He is on injured reserve, but from what we understand, it's more so because his brother that died in a tragic accident over the summer, and it really. That's traumatic. That's something that every family, when a family goes through that, he was very close to his brother. So he spent a lot of time this summer kind of dealing with that and helping his mother. So he, came into training camp and wasn't exactly in the best condition to play football. So they've kind of given him more time to kind of figure that out, sort that out himself. And they expect him back at some point this season, but he will not be available week 1. But, other than right tackle Zach Banner, who's still recovering from an ACL tear that he had early last season, they're pretty much healthy across the board. And I think that's the thing what the Steelers are most excited to see. Ben Roethlisberger's arm looks just fine. When you see him throwing the ball around in training camp practices and regular season practices and in the preseason, there's a lot of excitement in the air. Najee Harris has really brought a lot of life into the locker room as a guy at the running back position that they really haven't had a dynamic player, at that spot since Le'Veon Bell in 2017. It's been that long. So there's a lot of confidence there, and there's a lot of confidence in the defense. With Devin Bush, they went and got Joe Schobert to be the number 2 linebacker next to him, which they really feel excited about. There's still excitement about Minkah Fitzpatrick being, a top tier safety in the NFL. They still got Cam Hayward. There's a lot of excitement in both Melvin Ingram and Alex Highsmith as edge rushers. Still waiting to see TJ Watt practice in full. He's been doing like a partial practice deal while they work out his contract, but there's people are expecting that to kind of end and be done with by Wednesday. We will see. If he doesn't practice Wednesday, that would be my sign that he might not play week 1, but doubt that happens. But all in all, this team's healthy. They have a lot of talent across the board. It's going to be about, can they stay healthy, and can this offensive line gel? Because that's probably the biggest question mark on the team right now.
Yeah, I mean, for me, that's when I'm looking at this. Besides, like the losses of like Bud Dupree and a couple spots there, I feel like Steelers defense is one way or another. It's going to be similar to a Steelers defense, right? I feel like that's always the case. They're one of those teams to me. Like Baltimore does the same thing. You can take a lot of the pieces away, but somehow the defense still just finds the way. And I think the Steelers are going to do that. But for me, it has been the offensive line. To me, is the only thing when I'm looking at the team going, yeah, they're suspect at the offensive line, I feel like still, but that's because we haven't really seen it. And what they were last year, they just didn't look that good. But I mean, you bring in a stud running back, I mean, and things like that, he can make bad offensive lines look good too, right? So, I mean, it'll be interesting. But that to me is the only piece in Ben's health, right? There was some early like photos of him icing up real heavy in OTAs and things like that. And it's like, man, is he going to make it another season? Because where do you stand on the backup quarterback? Because for me, I feel like the Mason Rudolph project's kind of been over, and they should have gotten somebody different at this point. But I'm an outsider here, so I only see bits and pieces of it. But where do you stand on the backup if Ben goes down?
Well, the thing is that the Steelers know if Ben goes down, the season's pretty much done at that point, anyways, as far as any hope to make a push in the playoffs. But they feel confident that Mason Rudolph could be a competent backup, as in, hey, just be in the game, don't throw the interception, and let the defense and the running game win the game for you. That's what he's going to be there for. They do not believe that Mason Rudolph is the guy of the future, nor do they believe that Dwayne Haskins is the guy of the future. If one of them, suddenly flips a switch in a year or two, and they find that out, great. But this team is not banking on that at all. Right now, I mean, Mason Rudolph, he's a guy who, if you remember in 2019, him and Devlin Hodges, a 4th string undrafted rookie quarterback, came out of Division I AA or FCS football. They went 8-6 with those two guys. So I mean, they're confident that, like, look, if push comes to shove and maybe Ben just misses a couple games, these guys can at least come in, play decent enough football that the rest of the team can carry them to the win while they kind of manage the situation. That's what the Steelers backup quarterback situation is. It's not anyone trying to say that Mason Rudolph is the guy moving forward. He's the heir to Ben Roethlisberger, despite anyone who might try to say that that is the case right now. And who knows, if Ben retires after this season, maybe he becomes the temporary heir while they figure out the next one. But he, and by no means, is the guy that they're planning right now to be the new sheriff in town that they're going to draw up 45 passes a game for week in and week out.
Okay, gotcha. So speaking kind of on that, where you just moved us that way a little bit, is so you go out and you draft this really good running back. To me, does that mean that we're going to see a run heavy Pittsburgh offense this year? Do you think? Or I mean, you've got quite a bit of speed at the offensive wide receiver positions with Claypool. Johnson was like one of the most highly targeted players in the NFL last year. I mean, so are you anticipating a real kind of like balanced offense, or is this going to try to feed through Najee and then we just use our speed on play action and things of that?
Well, yeah, I don't see this being a run-heavy offense. I see it being a more balanced offense. I mean, last year, the Steelers had the worst rushing offense in the league. They ranked 32 in total yards produced, and they also ranked 32 in yards per carry. They were just abysmal when it came to running the football. And, part of it was the offensive line kind of aging and not being able to put it together. Another part of it was they didn't have any dynamic running backs. If the blocks weren't there, they weren't going to make a play with that. And as much as everyone loved James Conner, he's a guy from Erie, PA, went to Pitt, overcome cancer, was able to come back and play a really strong year as a finish out his career at Pitt, that got drafted by the Steelers, filled in for Le'Veon Bell when he didn't show up. Great story. Everyone loved James Conner, but at the end of the day, he was still just more of a slightly above average running back, and the Steelers wanted a dominant running back in that backfield, and that's what they believe Najee Harris can be. That being said, they're not going to just eliminate the passing game and take that away. It's just going to be a more balanced look, because last year, I mean, the Steelers, they weren't confident when they went into 3rd and 1s and 4th and 1 situations. They would often find themselves passing in those spots to try and overcome that, because they weren't confident that their running backs would be able to find the hole and take advantage of that. There is that confidence with Najee Harris, so you'll see a more balanced attack. But I'm not predicting the Steelers to have some top tier run game. If this rushing offense ends up ranking in the upper 20s, and I mean upper as in closer to 23, 22, 21, this offense will be right where they want to be, because they'll have Ben Roethlisberger, who feels a lot fresher than last year. Last year leading into the season, he threw like thousands of passes before minicamp even opened, because he was rehabbing that elbow of his that he got surgery on. And this year he didn't need to do all that rehab, and he feels a lot fresher doing it. So there's a lot of confidence that this offense can find a balance. They love Chase Claypool. They love Juju Smith-Schuster, Deontay Johnson, James Washington. And they're really, really liking Pat Freiermuth, their 2nd-round draft pick out of Penn State at tight end. Eric Ebron's still the starter, but both of them were named co-starters on the depth chart that got released Monday as their first official regular season depth chart. So really intrigued to see how they balance out this offense, because they have a lot of different talents in a lot of different positions.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought those guys up, because that's where I wanted to go next. Was Pat? He was coming out of the draft. I was like, we need to find a way to get him in Buffalo. Like, that's the guy. I know he was injured and he missed time, but if you go back and watch what he did in the year prior, the dude was making phenomenal catches on the sideline. I mean, he's a big body dude. Do you anticipate at some point that he may kind of just overtake the position this season, that Ebron maybe backseats a little bit? I mean, you got the co-starter, so that's convenient for both of them, I guess, at this point. But Pittsburgh to me has always been we love the tight end, right? I mean, I thinking back to Heath, and like all that kind of stuff. Is Pat going to be the new? We're going to hear it every time he scores a touchdown.
There is a chant that Steelers fans are trying to develop as far as Muth, because for Freiermuth. So that is, believe me, Steelers fans loved that Heath chant. I mean, when Heath Miller left, they had Jesse James, who was the next guy. Jesse James, just another bit, taller white tight end. So when he caught passes, they still screamed Heath after Heath retired. And Jesse James would look around like, that's not my name. What are we doing? But he eventually was like, I consider a badge of honor, because Heath Miller was a bad dude. But Pat Freiermuth, I think, is different. Jesse James was the 5th round pick that filled in nicely and gave you a couple good things. Pat Fryermuth looks like he's going to be a problem for a lot of teams once he figures himself out. In the one preseason game that Ben Roethlisberger played, both times that he got into the red zone, he put it right to Fryermuth in tight situations, and Fryermuth pulled it down in coverage. He doesn't drop too many passes. They really love using him, especially in red zone situations. I wouldn't say just straight up overtake Ebron, but they're going to rotate those guys a lot this year. And I'd look for Pat Fryermuth to be a serious problem when you get inside the 20 and Ben Roethlisberger starts looking down the middle of the field and says, okay, where's the weakness here? Are they sending guys to help outside? Are they blitzing a lot over the middle? Is there a one-on-one situation that I can get the ball to Pat? That's where I see Pat Fryermuth's impact coming in. And who knows, maybe by the end of the season, he's played his way into a position where, yeah, we want you out there more than Eric Ebron. But I think it's going to be more of a healthy dose of both getting out there because Ebron's still a veteran. His hands aren't as reliable as Fryermuth's have shown to be. But he's still a veteran that knows the job and knows responsibilities and assignments and how to adjust day to day in the NFL. So I'm not sure it's going to get overtaken right away, but I do think the plan is Pat Fryermuth becomes the serious red zone threat and overall tight end that all the other opponents are going to have to respect.
Yeah, I mean, I just watching him, I think that's exactly when he went there. I was like, that's exactly what they want, what they need. I mean, you just gave them exactly what they wanted, right? Like that's what it felt like to me. I was like, damn it, really? Pittsburgh got him? Okay. But very cool. So it feels to me like your offense is going to have no issues. Realistically, besides the offensive line, but I think overcoming with the passing game and Najee, they should be able to overcome that a little bit. I kind of mentioned it at the beginning there. I think we're both playoff contenders. Do you see the Steelers making the playoffs this year? Because the North is very tough. I mean, I've got the Browns as a very strong team. Baltimore is obviously going to be there. Cincinnati still is the lower tier in that group, but they're going to be in the mix a little bit. Do you have the Steelers making the playoffs?
I do. I think this team has too much balance. I mean, again, there's a lot of people, I do shows with different guys in the Locked On Podcast Network, and I talk to guys that host the Locked On Browns, Ravens, Bengals. There's a lot of people who seem to think that the Steelers are just going to fall off the map and get 5 wins this season. That's never happened under Mike Tomlin. And again, if your belief was that the Steelers would fall apart if Ben Roethlisberger wasn't there and wasn't playing at this extremely high level, that was proven wrong in 2019 when he was down and he was 0. They were 0-2 when he started, and then they finished 8-6. So, and they finished that as a season. That's 8-8 on the year. I mean, that was the year to have the losing season, and it didn't happen. I don't see it happening on a team that has the best edge rusher in football, the best safety in football, really talented interior defensive linemen in Stephon Tuitt and Cam Hayward, a talented linebacker in Devin Bush, who I think will be able to show up and show out this year once he's back in full 100%, a running back that they're very excited to see, a receiving core that might be among the deepest among the NFL. That's too many positive skill sets in groups, along with an organization that has the organizational integrity of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Because oftentimes you'll see teams, they'll amass talent, but it'll fall away real quickly, or things won't go the right way. The Steelers, they have the integrity to keep the guys they want to keep, to continue to build in the way they want to build. I don't see how this team finishes anything worse than a 10-7. And if it's the 7th seed wild card, okay, cool. But I think it's been since 2003. That would have been the last time that they finished lower than the 7th place in the AFC in rankings. And again, that was the year before Ben Roethlisberger. I don't see that happening in this year where that's going to change.
Yeah, I mean, I have them right there. I have them at like 9 wins. I just think their schedule makes some of it a challenge, right?
Mm-hmm.
They got some tough games they've got to play, and their schedule is not going to be favorable for them. So that's why I've got them right around there. And they, I don't know, have you seen the ESPN did their little thing where they put out their simulation thing? Where
no,
they
I did
run
not
the simulator like 20,000 times or whatever. And so they put it out, and it has the Jaguars coming in as the 7 seed, which I thought was pretty incredible that they start out like on this really hot run. They like start out 4-1 or something like that. But it gets down into it. The Pittsburgh's the 6th seed. They're 9-8. They lose, I think, in the first round of the playoffs. They do have the Bills at 13-4 and winning the Super Bowl against I think they played Green Bay in the Super Bowl. It was something like that.
That'd be a different one.
Yeah, that'd be kind of cool. But I've been chanting all this off season that it's Bills Browns for the Battle of Lake Erie for the AFC Championship this year. But so speaking of the Bills a little bit, before, as we're getting kind of close to the end here, you feel pretty confident on your side. You got a playoff team. I think I've been kind of down on the Steelers, and I think that this could potentially be a down year for them, and it's all schedule related for me realistically, and Ben's health and the offensive line. But as far as that goes, as far as the Bills, do you see them coming into Buffalo this opening week and really having a chance to win this game? Or is Buffalo too good of a team right now in your eyes for them to go into this? Because for me, this is really challenging. If you were to play the Steelers probably in like week 6, I would feel a lot more confident in saying that we could beat them, but not knowing necessarily what everybody's going to try to do in the first week. I give them a lot more of a chance to potentially win that game. But where do you kind of stand on that?
I mean, one thing I've learned in studying the NFL, watching the NFL, you never count out any team, no matter how much you think that they are worse than the other team. But when it comes to the Steelers right now, the biggest advantage I see the Bills having is, when you talk about not knowing, the Steelers still need their offensive line to gel. It looks like their starters will be Dan Moore, rookie 4th-round pick at left tackle, but he's really impressed in training camp. Kevin Dotson, who's a second-year 4th-round guard, but he looks like the truth at left guard. He may be the biggest problem for the Bills. Kendrick Green, a rookie at center. Trey Turner, a vet at right guard, and Chukwuma Okorafor at right tackle, another vet. All these are new. This line's never played together before. Trey Turner, new to the team. Kendrick Green. I mean, Trey Turner, Kendrick Green, Dan Moore Jr. weren't on this roster last year. So, and you're talking about an organization that, over the past, I'd say 6 or 7 years, had pretty much the same offensive line, which just rarely happens for more than 3 years in the NFL. So that's where the biggest thing that the Bills can take prey. If Jerry Hughes, if Ed Oliver, if those guys up front can cause problems, that could make some things real interesting. But I'm not counting out the Steelers in this. I wouldn't pick them to win per se. I still think the Bills are the favorites here, obviously. But I'm not counting these guys out because I've seen them play. And also, I mean, last year, the big thing was, early on in the season, I got different friends that, that cover Buffalo sports and we're following the game. And they were just like, how are the Steelers holding this team in the first half? And if you remember that defense, they were doing it. Now in the second half, Josh Allen and the Bills were like, just throw it to Stephon Diggs when he's covered by Steven Nelson. So that was kind of the solution then. But, I think the Steelers, they're a little bit more confident in how they can line up on defense. Last year, especially that part of the season, they were just decimated with injuries. They were down to 5th and 6th string, linebackers. Their edge rushing position was getting clobbered. Again, Ben's arm was just notably tired for how much rehab work he had to do in the offseason. There was so much that had to be calculated in those games that just definitely played a factor. I'm very intrigued to see how a fresh Steelers team approaches that situation. I do think that they can they can battle, and I think this will be a good game. I'm not saying it's going to be a blow, but I do think the Bills are going to be able to come in and handle their business. I've seen Josh Allen grow each year, and I think he's doing a phenomenal job of that growth. But one thing I always tell people: the Steelers, they're not exactly inexperienced in taking on big-armed mobile quarterbacks, over the years, whether it's Lamar Jackson now or, you go back to the days of like Steve McNair and some of the guys that they've faced that came through the AFC North. This is what they do. So Josh Allen will be a great test. I think he's a phenomenal quarterback, and I really see him being a guy that can give the Steelers fits at times. But a lot's going to tell how well is the defense gelling together in this off season. We will certainly find out in week 1.
And I mean, obviously, we're doing this on Monday, right? It's Labor Day, so we're recording on Monday. We don't really know. You mentioned Watt already. I think if he's out, that's a big hit. Obviously,
absolutely.
Right? I mean, he's one of the best players in football. I think last season what took place in that game too is Darrell Williams kind of handled Watt in the second half of that, where they kind of quit trying to do a bunch of stuff and just said, "Dude, you've got to stop him." Right? Like if you don't stop him, we don't have this figured out. And he came out and he kind of stopped him, and that really helped that situation. But I agree. I think this is going to be a battle. I'm trying to really temper my expectations with the Bills this year, because just watching them come out, even in the preseason for one series and in camp, they look electric, right? It feels like a winning team right now that's just ready to not be stopped. But the Steelers, to me, are a good football team, and they are capable of coming in and giving you a hard time if you're not really ready. And our offensive line they're all the same guys pretty much, right? They're all back, but they've played in like a few series together. They haven't been out there much. So this is going to be a test. And I wouldn't be surprised if people are a little disappointed at the beginning of this game that it's really close. because they're anticipating we should just be blowing the Steelers out. But I think it's going to be way closer than that. And defensively, I'm a little concerned with the speed of the wide receivers. I know we kind of held them in check a little bit during that game last year, but there's speed there, and everybody's going to be healthy and fresh. And so I'm a little nervous about the way this could go, but I do think we do have enough right now, especially momentum. The building should be out of control. Not that the Steelers can't handle any of that kind of stuff, right? They're plenty used to that stuff, but it should be pretty wild. But I'm excited.
I feel you. I mean, there's definitely a lot to be excited in Buffalo. I mean, I follow all the different teams, and Buffalo is one of those teams that I think has a really good chance to make it to the Super Bowl. I look at how their makeup is from top to bottom. I think they got really talented players on defense, really talented players on offense. They're building chemistry on both sides of the ball. They're doing a phenomenal job at that. I don't subscribe to the notion that this organization with the Steelers is just going to fall off the map, even with some of the tough schedules. I mean, the last time they won the Super Bowl, they had the hardest schedule in the NFL, and a lot of people counted them out then. And I've heard this for years now, Colt. This is, it's been like 4 or 5 years now. Like, this is the year that the Steelers will fall off. This is the year the Steelers will fall off. But guess what, guys? The Steelers are about to fall off this year. I've heard it. This is the 5th year in a row that I've heard they're going to finish 5-11 or now 5-12, and I'm just sitting here like, it's the same old song and dance. And so one day it will come true, and then people will say, we told you. And I'm just like,
right.
After you said it 30 times, yes, eventually it was going to happen. Good job. But again, the Bills are a really talented team. The Steelers are a really talented team. I think the Bills, they're carrying that momentum at the end of last year. I think there's a really, really bad sour taste in their mouth with the way that they went out in the playoffs. I saw that game. You could see the frustration in those players towards the end of the game with some of the penalties that they committed. With the Steelers, there's frustration on their end. That was the first time that they had ever lost to Cleveland in the playoffs. And that was the first time since, I want to say 2000. It was the second time since the Cleveland Browns had returned in 1999 that the Browns had won at Heinz Field. Like, the stat that I always told everyone for years was there were roughly about 15 to 16 high school football teams in Pennsylvania, in Western Pennsylvania, that had more wins at Heinz Field than the Cleveland Browns. And it's more like down to like 9 or 10 now, but that's still the point is that, and for those teams to get to Heinz Field, if you want to be a whippeal team in Western PA that gets all the way to Heinz Field, you have to win your division, go through a playoff, and then get to the championship round of that playoff, and then win that game. The Cleveland Browns just play at Heinz Field every year because it's the law. It's like that's and that's why the Steelers are so frustrated. And I think that's a big reason why Ben Roethlisberger was like, "Oh, I'm coming back," because he didn't want to go. I mean, he had owned Cleveland his whole career. In fact, last year was when Baker Mayfield, I think it was like mid-season, he became the winningest quarterback at First Energy Stadium for the Cleveland Browns. But before he had done that, it was Ben Roethlisberger who had the most wins at the stadium. So I think the Steelers, there's a bit of sour taste in their mouths as well. I wonder how that gels out in the first game. That's what we're all kind of waiting to see. TJ Watt officially did not practice on Monday, but a lot of us are talking Wednesday is going to be considered like the first day of practice for the Bills game. They did practice on Monday and do their things, but if he doesn't practice Wednesday, as he's waiting for this contract negotiation to finish, that'll be okay. This is a problem. But if he does, a lot of people are expecting him to be right back in it. I mean, years ago, back when Polamalu was doing a contract negotiation, he literally signed a contract on the plane on the way to the Week 1 game. So the Steelers, it's not been past them to kind of wait until the last minute to sign a defensive superstar to an extension.
Yeah, I'm not anticipating that he's not going to get a contract done before this opener. I think it's important that he's there, and it's important for us. I think it's more important for us to get this win than it is for the Steelers, in my opinion. I think we need this momentum. If we come out with all of this hype and everything, and then you just get knocked out first game and you got your first loss of the season, not that it's end all be all, right? There's plenty more to play, but it definitely takes a hit to your armor, I think, immediately. So I'm anticipating hopefully not too hyped up of a team, so they keep it together, right? But hopefully we do handle our business this week, and I think it's going to be a really good football game. But before we get out of here, Chris, we're up against the end here. Anything you want to shout out that you've got coming up, you're working on, anything that you just want to highlight before we get out of here?
Well, if you like my work, you can listen or watch the Locked On Steelers podcast. We're on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Odyssey, any of those things. You get it's Monday through Friday. You get your Steelers fix. But Bills fans, if you want to scout the Steelers and see what they're doing on top of listening to this show, go check out my show every day of the week. I'm breaking things down and giving you some insight on what the Steelers are doing and how things are looking at practice. You can also read my work at DK where I break down film on the Steelers. I also do some Pitt football, and Buffalo's got two guys, DeMar Hamlin and Dane Jackson. Both of those guys I've seen at Pitt. So there's if you want to see who might be the next guy coming to Buffalo from Pitt, that's another place to check me out. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Carter Critiques, and stay tuned. We got a lot of great stuff going on there. And listen, I work alongside a former Buffalo journalist or TV journalist, Jenna Harner. She works at our Channel 11 WPXI studios. So her and I converse a lot about all things Steelers, Bills, and things like that.
Love it. Awesome. And obviously, Chris, I know you're a busy man, so thanks a lot for coming on, dude. I really appreciate it. I know you got a lot going on. Everybody, thanks for listening in again this week. We'll make sure we got everything in the show notes for you guys to connect with Chris and follow everything he's up to, because he's putting out a lot of good work, and he's highlighting cool organizations too. So also make sure you head over to ceapittsburgh.org, and that's how you can check out the Community Empowerment Association. And for all things for me, thanks for being here, guys. You guys we're super pumped up coming into the season, all off season. We've just been dragging and going and going and going, and now we're finally here. So I'm super amped for the Nerd Mafia to have a fun season. The Bills are going to kill it this year, hopefully. So thank you very much for being here, guys. Of course, this week again, the show is brought to you by the Pigskin Podcast Network. That's where you'll be finding us all year long. And of course, go Bills.